What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the returning viewers, and if you're brand new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So let's play a little game. If you gave me a brand new property right now, we're at the beginning of September, and you told me I can't do any of the things that I talk about on my channel except for just one thing, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. That's what we're going to go over, because it is definitely the biggest bang for your buck, the biggest buck you can bang. That didn't sound right. The biggest buck for your bang, or your arrow for that matter. That's what we're going to talk about today. And that, of course, is creating these funnels or these pinch points for these bucks, because that's where we're going to be able to get them right in front of us. That's where we're going to get a shot on them. And these things work on both public and private land. You do need to check some of the regulations on those public properties as far as what you can cut. But that is something that we'll go over in this video. And we're going to talk about 3 different terrains that this will work on. So first off, we're going to talk about, if you're in a hilly area, how you can use topography to increase putting bucks in front of you, utilizing a pinch point or utilizing a funnel. So when you're in an area with a lot of topography, you want to be looking for areas with benches or with saddles that are going to create those natural pinch points. Now, you are not going to be able to force a deer to run up or down a very steep hill if you have a lot of topography, unless you're spooking them. So what we want to do is use what is naturally given to us to our advantage. We want to get into either a bench or a saddle where the deer should be naturally moving. You should see natural deer trails through these areas if you found them. But we want to sweeten them up a little bit. And like I said, this will work on public or private land. If you are on public land, you can get in and typically work with hand tools. They don't want you getting in there with a chainsaw or heavy equipment, obviously, but a lot of times they will let you cut trees down, cut branches off of trees with hand tools. Verify that for the specific piece of public property you have in mind, but you can get a lot of this work done on those public parcels as well. Now, obviously, if you're on public land, you sweeten these up too much, you're gonna have every other hunter trying to hunt that spot too. So make sure you are finding yourself a good back honey hole in this public property. There are a ton of areas with public land available in this country. The northern part of Wisconsin is covered with 1.5 million acres of public land. It's the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest. So there is very little other hunter pressure up there if you can find the right spot to get off the beaten trail up there and really get an area of your own to try to do some of these improvements on. Now, I know others, you can't get there and you're going to have to hunt the more populated areas, so maybe these aren't going to work out so well for you. But what you can do is get into these areas and you're going to want to really open them up. So like I said, with a chainsaw, with a handsaw, whatever you got to do, open up those natural deer trails that are leading into this natural form topography pinch point. And what that's going to do is really make those deer use those trails. So you can really control which trails they're using to come into this based on where you want to put your stand location. So you can really help yourself with like wind placement in a morning sit or an afternoon sit of where you're going to be dumping your scent off the other side of this topography, depending on the specifics of the situation that you're finding this saddle or this bench in. But what you can do is definitely sweeten up those trails by clipping them, making them easier for the deer to move down. They will always use that path of least resistance if you give it to them. And what you can do with the branches you're cutting off, instead of just chucking them off into the woods, use them to make it more difficult for the deer to move through other areas of the woods that you don't want them to move through. Maybe it's behind a big tree that you wouldn't be able to have a shot on. If you pile up a pile of sticks behind that big tree, that buck is not going to stop behind that big tree if he wanders over there off the beaten trail. So the other thing you can do is maybe shut off one of the other deer trails that you don't want them walking on through the area and force them onto the one that goes in front of you on this pinch point. And then now, after you've done all of that, you can obviously go off further and further into the woods. You can go hundreds of yards in any direction. The deer will take that path of least resistance, especially if it's already moving towards that natural pinch point. And that's just going to get them there quicker. They're going to be able to get there at a slow walk or a run if they are spooked, but at least at a slow walk rather than having to kind of duck and everything under all of those other branches and stuff that may have been blocking their path a little bit. So again, the faster they can move through the woods on a nice trail like this, the faster they're going to get to you. Now, don't try to open these up too much. You want these just to be about as wide as you able to walk down this trail without bumping your shoulders or your head or anything into any branches. This doesn't have to be wide open so that you can drive like an ATV down it. So just get these opened enough that the deer have an easy time moving through them. You do want these to weave through the woods. You don't want them to be a straight shot if you're trying to build these from scratch. Deer don't really like being able to see straight down a long path for too long. They'll end up avoiding those and only crisscross them perpendicularly instead of actually going down them, which is what you want. So make sure these bend and weave their way through the woods, and the deer will bend and weave their way straight to you. Now, the second type I want to talk about is if you're trying to create these in the big woods. Maybe your topography is in the big woods, or maybe your topography is in more open country, but what you can do in the woods is exactly what I was talking about with topography. Is you really want to use the brush, the shrubs, the trees to your advantage. So you want to open up these trails through the woods. Now, if you're in a more flat area, there's not topography requiring them to only cross on this saddle between these two huge high hills. You're going to want to make sure that those other areas are way thicker. You're going to create that high hill with downed brush. You can kind of almost create your own picket fences with branches and whatever to make it too difficult for them to cross where you don't want them to cross, and then open up the paths that lead into your man-made pinch point or your deer funnel. So these trails don't have to just be a trail in and a trail out. They could be 3 coming in from this way, 3 coming in from this way. This can really be a spider web that goes off from this specific spot, but you want to make sure that all the way this way and all the way behind you is completely blocked off, so they have to come through this pinch point. And you can simply do that if you are in a thick enough area of the woods. Maybe this is some regenerative growth you're in, maybe this is in some shrubs that are near a creek bottom or something. You can really just open up a trail through those thick areas because the deer, again, are going to use that easier path of movement through the woods instead of trying to bust through that thick cover. And again, make them bend and weave and wind through the woods. You don't want those big straight open shooting lanes. You do not want to create those in that thick cover. They're used to being in thick cover. They're not used to being able to see 100 yards down this trail you just made. So make sure the visual line of sight down them is cut off as it winds down the trail. And now, like I said, you can do that in all of the directions. Make a spider web out of this location. All paths will lead to you, and that's of course where you're going to have a shot on them. Now, you can spice these up a little bit. You can put in a mock scrape. So even if you are on public land, a lot of times it's okay to hang a mock scrape out there. You may be required to use more natural style twine and stuff. Those are available online. There are biodegradable twines that you can buy. Now, of course, you're going to have to replace that stick a lot more often because that twine's going to decay and you're going to have to replace it. But there are things you can do to create these on public land. Again, just check the regulations for the specific public land parcel that you're planning on hunting on. Make sure everything's good to go for what you plan on doing there. But you can put in these mock scrapes in the middle of these pinch points, even on public land. Now, if you're on private land, you could put in a water hole too, especially those rutting bucks. They are going to want to hit water when they are wandering around chasing does. Day and night, they need water, and they will go to water. I know that a lot of times they'll skip eating. They'll lose a ton of body mass because they're not eating and they're running a lot more, but they definitely will stop for water. So putting a water hole in at this pinch point is going to work very well for you guys to get these bucks right in front of you. Now, the third thing that I want to talk about is if you're in a more open area, so a prairie or like a swamp bottom that's got a lot of high grasses and stuff. Now, if this is short prairie grass that's only like a foot or two tall, chances are these deer are not coming out there during the daylight. So we're talking more that grass that's 4, 5, 6+ feet tall. In these areas, it's pretty easy to create these deer funnels and these pinch points as well. Again, the same strategy applies. We want to make it easier for them to get to your pinch point. So if there is an area, if you are on a creek, that they are already naturally crossing that creek, that's where you want to set up because they know that the water's shallow enough there, or they know they can get up and down the banks on either side, whatever the situation is there. That's already a natural pinch point. But you can sweeten it up a little more by, again, creating that spider web of trails that come in and out of there. And if you're in just an area with grass, you can do that with a weed whacker by just mowing down trails that come into there. They don't have to be that fancy. You don't even have to whack the weeds all the way down to the ground. You can just get the tops off of them. If it's the easiest path through there, that's where they're going to walk. And so again, if you're on public land, they're not going to let you do that. But what you can do is just trample them down, like just walk through them and push them down and make it so that the grass bends over in those areas and that it's still the easiest path in and out of those areas. This is the easiest way for you guys to create these deer funnels, these pinch points for these bucks to come cruising through there, because of course if you have all those does coming through there, those bucks are going to come through there to check out what all that scent is about. Again, no matter where you are, any of these 3 types, get that mock scrape in there, get that water hole in there. If you guys feel like you got some value out of this video, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. Otherwise, go check out this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.